Good afternoon. Welcome to today's edition of the Coal Seam. I'm Chris Hamilton with the West Virginia Coal Association, West Virginia Coal Forum, and I want to welcome you to today's program segment. Joining me in the studio today is our Senate President and the state's third Lieutenant Governor, Bill Cole from Bluefield, West Virginia. Senator, Lieutenant Governor, thanks so much for taking time to join us. Awful good to see you here today.
It's good to see you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, as you know, we might as well get right into it. As you know, there's a lot going on impacting coal and energy within the state. You know, on one hand, it's very interesting times. On the other hand, there's so much uncertainty looming, you know, over the coal industry that's been really depressed here over the past couple of months. But we got oil and gas that seems to, you know, seems to be filling in a little bit of that void or some growth within that industry. And we got this whole change underway or transition period that we're going through that impacts the entire electric grid and you know, electric generating industry as well. Just a lot going on.
Well, it is. But you know what? I think it's scary times. It's scary times for a whole lot of miners and their families and support industries. The uncertainty is tough for all of us to live with. You know, we talk about the war on coal, and our president wants to say that there's really not a war on coal, and frankly, our own newspaper here in Charleston said the other day in the editorial that the war on coal is nothing but a successful PR campaign, and there's nothing to it. And I'd like to suggest that there's thousands of families that might beg to disagree. But having said that, and to look to the positive, in this last legislative session, obviously working very closely with Coal Association and industry, we passed a lot of legislation. We did a lot of things to ease the burden, to take the pressure off our coal industry, and hopefully put them in a position to be more competitive. We're all in. We're committed. You know, God granted West Virginia with an abundance of natural resources, and certainly we built this state on the backs of coal. We're lucky that we have such an abundance of gas, but you know, gas is important. It's critical to our future, but it'll never replace coal, and we have to work hard to make sure that we do all we can do to continue to support the industry.
Well, I can't thank you enough on behalf of industry and the thousands of miners that are working out there today for all you've done in a short period of time. You've been in office and sort of at the controls, especially on the Senate side. You know, there was major legislation that was, I think I heard you say earlier in the session that you know, you're not just going to stand by and allow all the finger pointing to Washington. You know, there's a lot we can do here on the state level to prevent further loss and to make sure we're ready when that opportunity, you know, comes our way again, to make sure we're a little mean and lean and you know, so we can be more efficient, more viable.
You know, it is easy to point a finger at Washington. Quite frankly, they deserve the finger pointing. I better be careful how I say
Absolutely.
that, Chris. But it's reasonable to put the blame in Washington, but to sit back and say then they have to fix it and we're not willing to do anything ourselves is wrong. Now, I think we have a group representing us and our senators and our congressmen in Washington that are phenomenal, and I think they'll work every day and they'll fight the battle in Washington. But we need to fight the battle in the state to make sure that we do all the right things by our industry.
That's a great point, and you know, I was speaking to a miner at the Coal Forum the other day who worked in the area, and he said that you know, every day, every week, he and his wife, you know, they read about all these layoffs, they read about mine closures, and he indicated he had two sons going to West Virginia University, and you know, they're just not sure, very concerned over the future. and it just seems like every day there's another. And he come up after the meeting. He was pleased to hear, we had a pretty good team in place, and everybody's kind of really pushing back, and we got some some multi-state coalitions going on, and I think it's important that the miners, on whether they're on layoff or working under the stress of being laid off at some point, I think it's important that they, as critical of the political process that they seem to be, I think it's important that they realize that there are some elected officials, some very credible elected officials working on their behalf every day. And, again, you and Speaker Armstead here at Charleston joining with Senator Capito, and Senator Manchin's doing a great job on energy issues. And then we have our congressional reps and Attorney General Morse. I mean, we have a pretty solid team, working on behalf of the state's coal and energy industry. So.
Yeah, no question. And the AG is flat doing battle on our behalf. He is leading the charge and pulling together multi-state coalitions to work for our industry. And one thing, we've done several of the coal forums together now, and one thing that I love to see is how everybody comes together. You have the UMWA represented, you have companies, you have industry represented, and to have everybody come together as one.
Utilities been there, a lot of suppliers.
I just that's such a pleasant change, perhaps, from what we've been so used to for so many years. But it's worth fighting for. We're going to fight.
Well, again, there's just so much going on, and I guess one of the obvious ramifications of all these policies and all the costs that are being placed on our public utilities is that we will likely see not just industrial power but household power be elevated as well in terms of cost.
Chris, it defies description to me. Now, first of all, the administration in Washington says that energy costs are going to go down. That's ludicrous. Who do they think we are? I mean, come on. But you have industrialized leading nations in the world, Germany and Japan, that are putting coal-fired power plants online while they're taking nuclear and wind offline. And you know what they're looking out for? They're looking out for their citizens. They're looking out for their industries. They're going to make sure that their industries have affordable power so that they can go be competitive in a world market. But I'll tell you what scares me to death in West Virginia. No, we're not rich with those manufacturing industries, and we all wish that we had more of that here. We need to work to have it here. But it horrifies me when we're one of the poorest states in the nation. We have so many people struggling to make ends meet, and as well as seniors on fixed income. And here we are going to add 50% or double their power bill. The stories are going to be awful tough. And and it's not, we think it's the cold in the winter. Well, people can burn wood. There's other things that they can do. The summer, it's the summer when it gets so critically hot. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned where we're headed, not only as a state but as a country.
Well, it's rightfully so. Three things come immediately to mind. First of all, we have one of the highest unemployment rates. So
the highest.
So income in this state has dropped off, substantially. We have one of the fastest aging populations. So we do have, perhaps a disproportionate share of seniors and elderly here, and we also have, I think I read here recently, almost 400,000 low and medium income families in the state of West Virginia, and there's going to be a much higher percentage of their available dollars that's going to have to be expended on energy, just household energy, whether it's heat, air conditioning, whatever it is.
If they have those dollars.
If they have those dollars. So our residents are I don't think it's any big secret. There's been 30-some states that have pushed back and have expressed opposition to this current clean power plan that was just recently enacted by EPA a month ago or so now.
Well, I think that's we passed out of the legislature, was it House Bill
2004.
2004,
Yeah.
that would give us legislative review of the Clean Power Plan before the West Virginia DEP submits that to the EPA. And one thing that I'm encouraging the governor is chairman of the Southern States Energy Board, which is a coalition of
And we should have mentioned him, by the way, in that group of elected officials that we have that are really pushing back.
There's no question.
He's done a good job.
No question. He is solid on board. He's it's important to him as well. But he hosts the Southern States Energy Board next month, I think, or in the next 30 or so days. And so as chairman, I think it'd be a great thing for him to do in his keynote address to those people that we're going to add our name to the list of states that are not going to submit a SIP or a state implementation plan. We have to be a little bit careful. Our Attorney General has litigation ongoing, so we need to see where that goes, and we don't want to do anything to cross-thread his good work. But I think is it 5 states?
I believe
think
5.
Now, Chris,
I believe 5.
Have just said, look, we're not going to pile onto ourselves. The federal government's doing a good enough job by themselves. They don't need us to help them.
I know there's some legal concerns. I had a discussion recently with General Morrissey, and as I indicated to him, I think it's still important that we go into, this round of conflict or battle. That might be too strong of a term.
No, I don't think it is. I think you're spot on.
But I think it's important that we take a hardline position, which we could always loosen up if we need to. But if we can get the majority of those states that oppose this plan to simply say we will not sign on to it, because of the legal aspects, perhaps the constitutionality, aspect of the rule itself. And and everybody's also asking, what does this rule ultimately, what's it aimed at? What's the end game? What is it trying to accomplish? And when you look at the fact that it's really purporting to control or remove less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And to think of, the damage it's creating and the loss of employment throughout the coal fields, which, as you know, ripples through not just the direct but all the indirect jobs in our communities, all that for less than 1%. Of global emissions is just it's almost preposterous.
And we're taking it on. We're going to be the world's savior. Nobody else is buying into this. They're going the other direction. They're going to utilize coal. But it's look, nobody wants to pollute our not our air, not our water. I want to leave a better environment for my children and their children to come, but I think there's a fine balance, a fair balance that we need to strike. God put those resources in the ground for a reason, and I genuinely believe it was to use them. Now we need to use them judiciously, but I think the battle that's coming out of Washington is just ludicrous. Why we're going to pick ourselves at, why we're going to render ourselves uncompetitive in the world and further harm our own population.
It troubles me when I hear President Obama or EPA Administrator McCarthy say or insist that the United States has to provide leadership to the rest of the world. And the reason that troubles me so much is that our coal-fired utilities have state-of-the-art, technological advancements on our coal-fired plants today, second to none. And those after-treatment devices have been designed to control emissions of all sorts, and they have cost hundreds of billions of dollars. And we have already, for the most part, paid for that. A lot of that cost has been put back out through the rate base, and
AKA consumer.
AKA consumer. But the point is that our developing countries over the past 30 years have not followed our lead with respect to putting the first filter on these coal-fired plants. I mean, so you have to ask, why would they follow our lead, destroying our economy, for controlling, a small percentage of greenhouse gas emissions? They're just not going to do it.
Well, I don't disagree, and I don't think we can't figure out what's right or wrong for us to do based on what some other country will or won't do. But I think if we're good stewards of our environment and strike a reasonable balance, then I'll sleep okay at night.
Mm-hmm.
But and then they somehow feel better in Washington. They say we're going to send few $1 million down to Appalachia to retrain coal miners. Okay, well, I'm from the southern part of the state, and you go take a drive down through McDowell and Mingo and Wyoming counties and Boone. What else is there? If you're not mining coal or in direct support of that industry, what are you going to retrain somebody to do? You're just going to say, look, you got to pull up roots, you got to move. You've lived here for 50 years of your life, and now if you want to make a living, you got to move. It's just not, it's such an unreal, I just wish some of the people from Washington could just come down and take a visit.
Well, they need to.
Yeah, well, the EPA won't even come. They won't show their face here.
No. Coal mining is a very admirable profession.
My goodness, yes.
I mean, when you think of the essence of mining, we all know it's brought us through wars and, it powered us through the industrial age, but the essence of mining is that they're doing what they're doing, producing this low-cost electricity, and my goodness, it's built this country to where we enjoy all the liberties and freedoms we have today. And we have this extraordinary quality of life that's been based all in large measure on having affordable household electricity.
There's no question.
I had the opportunity to go to China a couple years ago, and one of the reasons we were told very directly and succinctly that one of the main reason that they're not concerned about putting all these after treatment devices, which by the way uses large units of power themselves.
Sure.
We were at a coal-fired plant, and the person who operated the plant was asked about what's going off CO2. In fact, it was the governor who asked him. He said, "You need to understand." He said, "We have 20% of our population here in China without electricity, without household power." And he said, until we get a light bulb in every single province, we're not going to worry about a little carbon dioxide.
Right.
And boy, that hit home. I mean, that really
puts it in perspective.
It really, really does. But we appreciate everything you're doing, just trying, I mean, I know you're interested and concerned about diversifying our economy, but you refuse to give up on our state's heavy energy industries such as mining, and we appreciate that.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, I think it's, it built this great state, it built this great country, and to just turn our back on it's wrong. But, and we did. Legislatively, we talked about reviewing the state implementation plan, but we passed the Coal Jobs and Safety Act, and what a lot of what that did was update rules and regulations that go back to 1940s and 50s technology, which has obviously changed a lot. We followed that up with Senate Concurrent Resolution 63 to make sure that never do we jeopardize, none of that can jeopardize the life or safety of one single miner. It has to be, that can't be on the table. It can't be well, we'll do this, and it might jeopardize safety a little bit. We just can't allow that to happen. There's not a human life that's worth it. But to update rules that will save our coal companies millions of dollars in mining, I think is critical. We elevated energy to a major committee status. I can't believe that for all these years that coal has built our state, that it was never a major committee. Judiciary was.
Right.
Let's pass a whole bunch of laws, but let's not take energy up where it belongs. So we elevated to major committee status, which means they have full-time attorneys and staff that can work on the issues.
I got to say, we've
all
already
year.
benefited. The industry has benefited from. It seems like in some ways a relatively simple move just to reclassify a committee, but you have some infrastructure, you have full-time staff, and I know they were very much engaged in analyzing the ARENA Act that was advanced
Absolutely.
by Senator Capito and Manchin. And that has the potential of putting the brakes on EPA and the implementation of their Clean Power Plan. But they did a great job analyzing that and providing you and your colleagues with, and in the industry, we benefited as well by having that, that basis of fact to move forward on.
Yep. Well, let's see, what else did we repealed the state cap and trade law.
Yes.
Again, Washington's doing all we need to weigh on our industry. So, and it was a different time perhaps when that law got passed, but it's a different time now, and we did the right thing by taking that off the books. We're looking at tax reform, and we want to. It's a pretty difficult thing to look at right now with our budget under the stresses that it is. But we're going to continue to look for ways to rely perhaps less on severance taxes, and we do have, though it's not something that I'm going to take credit for legislatively, but the 56 cents a ton additional severance tax to retire the old workers' comp debt will be done sometime in the next 6 to 12 months. So that goes away. That's a heavy burden.
Oh, it
on the
is.
industry.
I was looking at something. What triggered it was the governor had an announcement here a couple weeks ago about the workers' comp rates going down again.
Right.
And that just prompted me to look into that a little bit. And the coal industry's paid just over $800 million to retire that old debt, and consequently, every single business and all other industries has received a much lower comp rate so they could be more competitive within their business category.
Yep.
But all that was done basically because of the 56 cents a ton on coal, and a little bit on gas. And
It was on gas, a little bit on timber. I think some was personal income tax. We put, so we'll feel the relief, not just I think coal industry will feel it the most, but we're going to
absolutely.
feel it statewide.
It'll be very timely here when and hopefully it's removed here next year or so.
Yeah.
When we talk about the Coal Jobs and Safety Act, we focus on some of the safety-related provisions, and as you say, there was a Senate concurrent resolution that ensured that nothing dropped below the current safety standard. But there was also some well thought out environmental related issues that DEP actually joined in supporting the bill. Some contemporaneous reclamation. There were some changes made to inactive status so that mines don't have to shut down immediately and begin reclamation. They can remain in a state of readiness for a little while. Some of the water quality standards. Actually, that bill was probably 8 or 9 major pieces of legislation all placed into one bill.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a misnomer to say that was one piece of legislation, because it was probably the most comprehensive piece of coal legislation ever formulated and passed here.
And that passed with good bipartisan support, and that's one thing that I'm so proud of our last legislative session was the amount of bipartisan support that we had for virtually everything that we did. I really Tim Armstead and I went out of our way to make sure that we were bringing not only both sides of the issue or both sides of the aisle, but all sides of the issue as best we can into the room, talk about it, try and come up with the best overall piece of legislation. You know, I think we all think that we have the best idea